Hey, leaders, welcome back. So, in episode one, we really hit on the overall structure, and that's what you see here, right? So, just as a reminder, it's your regular tier one, tier two, tier three triangle. It's really about the levels of support. So, as students move up, then they get more support, and we don't ever take that support away until they test out of those areas that they're needing help in. And then in episode two, we really talked about how if you're going to make a shift like this in your building, then you need to make sure that you get your teachers on board. Because if you skip this step and you don't get your teachers on board with the vision and where you're going, you're really going to pay for it later because it probably won't work. Okay, so we're going to come back to this. This is going to be something like every 2 or 3 episodes that we end up going through because this is essential in making a change in your building. So I'm excited today. Today we're really going to dig into some data and go over what this should or could look like data-wise. And in order for intervention to work in your building, you have to have super strong data structures. Okay. And what I mean by that is it's the way that you look at data, but it's also the data that you're collecting and the data that you're using. When we first started, I noticed that we were collecting Friday assessments. We had benchmarks. We had spelling tests. We had all these things that students were being assessed on that never really gave us true data that we could use. So I've challenged, and this takes time, but I've challenged my teachers on why are we giving that assessment if it doesn't inform our next moves. Okay, so any assessment that you give should inform the next few weeks of instruction that you're giving to kids. And if you're just giving it for a grade, or if you're just giving it for another reason, then truly, maybe you're wasting that time. Okay, so the data pieces that you collect, again, should inform your instruction for the next couple weeks for that child. So I want to talk about big data systems, okay? State assessments, iReady, NWEA. These are great big data systems, okay? And they do show you growth, and they do show you how your students are progressing on standards. However, for intervention, they're just a little bit too big. And here's why. Too much in them to provide solid skill-based intervention that closes gaps. Okay? So I'm not saying it can't be used, but as soon as you give that as soon as you give that benchmark, within about a month, that data is old and it's not usable anymore. If you're intervening on data that's 4 or 5 weeks old, then you're not moving as quickly as you should for your kids, and your kids are staying in those groups way too long. So we need something that's a little bit more narrowed. And I always think about like my 3rd through 6th grade students. If my 3rd through 6th grade students are not reading at 100 words a minute on a Lexile grade level assessment, then I have an intervention and fluency problem. I have a phonics and fluency problem. Okay, so I have to go back to my PK all the way up through 3rd grade. 2nd grade really is the end of phonics, and build that first. So if you're looking for a place to start, you got to start in your youngest grades. You have to build your foundation in order to build the house. And I could go into phonics programs. There's a lot of great phonics programs out there. And honestly, lots of research on each of those. Great groups of people that have put those together. If you have a good scope and sequence and your tier 1 instruction is solid for phonics, stay with that, right? If not, then you need to spend some time building that scope and sequence of phonics skills. I've attached kind of the skills that have to be taught and when they have to be taught into the course, but you have to spend some time building and putting that into your curriculum maps and things of that nature. But if that's already there, again, you can't intervene your way out of a tier 1 problem, then you're really starting to think about intervention and how you can use these data systems to go over your intervention. Okay, so we're going to dig into some pieces of data, and I'm going to show you how we do this. Attached on your course, you're going to see a basic phonics assessment, and I'm going to pull mine up in front of me here. So we want to make sure that we narrow down our structures, and we want to make sure we narrow down our data all the way down to that skill level. So think about your big data piece up here, down to fluency, down to skill level. Okay, so we've given a basic phonics screener. It's from California Reading and Literature Project, and it goes through all the systems. So it goes through letters and sounds all the way down to multisyllabic words, digraphs, final E words, and we use our extra support and our classroom teachers to give this, and then we put it into a data sheet. And I'm going to make sure that on our screen you can see that data sheet and what that looks like. So after we put all of our assessments into the data sheet, we start to kind of color code. We start to color code where kids are and where each of them needs support and intervention. And before we even do that, we color code where kids should be. So at the beginning of first grade, they should be around that final E skill. And so I'm going to make final E, long vowel digraphs, are controlled. I'm going to make those all green, meaning that they're tier 1 skills. Then I'm going to go back to consonant digraphs and blends and make those yellow, meaning they're tier 2 skills. Again, I'm going to go back to short CVC. Those are tier 2B skills in first grade. And then consonant sounds and short vowel sounds at this point would be tier 3 skills. Okay, in first grade. So now I've got a color-coded chart. Then I'm going to start putting in my data. So this student got a, let's say, 23 out of 26, got all of their short vowel sounds, and then got 7 out of 10 and 2. Based on that information, I can see that this student is a tier 2 student. Okay? So, on my summary page, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to look at consonant digraph, and I'm going to write that student's name, John Smith. I'm going to go back to my data sheet and put in my next student. This student only got 11 consonant sounds, 3, 0, 0. Once they get 0 in 2 sections, you stop. Okay? So I'm going to go back over to my summary sheet. And that student needs to be in consonant sounds. So Kayla Drake, consonant sounds. Okay? I go back to my phonics sheet to my next student. My next student is 26, 5, 10, 5, 5, 5, 3. Okay, looking at this student is in what? Tier 1, right? So since they're in tier 1, they actually don't need to go into intervention. We're going to just keep with the tier 1 instruction that's happening. I'm going to go to one more student, and then I'm going to move up to like second grade so we can see that. Let's say this student is at 26 consonant sounds, 5 vowel sounds, and 3 CVC words. So I'm going to start with CVC words. I'm going to go back to my sheet. They're a tier 2 student, and I'm going to write in their name. And as I build my list, what it will look like is it'll start to look like groups. And since I already know my structure, I already know what this looks like, then based on the color coding, I know how many groups those children need to be in. So I'm going to move up to a second grade student at the beginning of the year. A second grade student should be somewhere around R-controlled other vowel digraphs, getting ready to move into 2-syllable words. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and color code. Those are green. I would say inflections all the way up to long vowel digraphs are tier 2. Blends and inflections, tier 2B. And consonant digraphs, I would also say, are tier 2B. And then anything below that's going to be tier 3. So I go back to my data sheets and I have a student that has 26 consonant sounds, 5 vowel sounds, can do CVC, gets all the way to inflections and final E. So in second grade, that child is a tier 2 student. I'm going to go over to my summary sheet and write their name on my summary sheet. And just the same as I did in first grade, I'm going to put them where they go on this list and start to build out lists. Okay, what am I doing? I'm getting ready for scheduling. So once I get my list for my grade levels and where everybody is, I'm starting to build out what my schedule needs to look like and what grade levels need the most support. That's what you're going to do within the first couple weeks of school. Yes, you do want to be building relationships in your classes, and hopefully eventually you'll get to the point where you can use last year, the end of the year data, so you don't even have to take that time and you can just get started right away. But we want to get these intervention groups going up and off the ground within 3 weeks. So that third solid week, we want to make sure that we are going with intervention groups because we want to give kids as much time as possible to cook, right? We want to give them as much time as we can to make sure that they get as much intervention as possible to catch up. So that was a lot, and it's a big process to make sure that you're putting this information in. But again, all of these data sheets, all of everything that you need to get off the ground with this is within the course. And so make sure that you take some time to look at it. Make sure that you take some time to get to know it and own the data. So, you know, it's my favorite thing ever. I'm kind of a data nerd, but if it's not your thing, it's okay. When we first started this, you want to make sure that you do this with your leadership team because eventually you want to hand this off a little bit to your coaches and to your teachers. But for right now, as you're starting, you want to know it the best. You want to be able to talk to your data, okay? So that's how you really get off the ground with your data systems. And again, later on, you know, we'll talk through math. We'll talk through how this looks in behavior. But for reading intervention in those younger grades, this is what this looks like. If you have questions, we're here for you. We want to support you, and we want to be a part of this journey with you. So please reach out if you have questions for us. We'll be happy to answer those. We hope you get this off and going. If you have, you know, when you put this data in, don't be discouraged by it because you're getting ready to enter into a season where you are closing gaps quickly. And your teachers are going to start to feel some success and you're going to start to see some growth. So I'm excited for you to get this off the ground and going.